Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's service. My name is Dona Mitoma, and I will be chairing today's service. Let's see. Today we're going to begin with our meditative, reflective reading. So if you'd be so kind as to rise. Oops, what happened? This is from a book called How to Be Happy by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and it's about how to be happy. The Dharma itself is like a life jacket, but it's up to you to wear the life jacket as you cross the perilous sea of suffering. It's up to you to practice. Meditation is a way to make your mind calm, clear, and stable. It is the way to stop creating harm. Meditation is the way to have peace. Ultimately, is the way to stop creating problems. But just to have peace of mind yourself is not sufficient. The most important purpose of practicing meditation is to develop the good heart, bodhicitta, the aspiration to give others less harm and more benefit. But even though you might not have yet developed your mind to the point where you have completely stopped harming others and only benefit them, you should still strive to cultivate bodhicitta. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Please be seated. Next we're going to do Sutra Chanting, and we're going to do Sei Ge on page 39 of your service book.
Usatsu Daimuryo Jukyo Sei Ge Gagononcho Segan Kishimu Jodo Shigan Mandoku Seifujo Shoga Gano Muryoko Uindai Seishu Usai Sho Bingu Seifujo Shoga Gashiryo Butno Myoshoto Jippo Kukyo Mi Shomon Seifujo Shogak Ryokujin Shonen Kyoeshu Bongyo Shigumu Jodo Isho Teninshi Jinnariki and Daiko Kushomu Taido Shoujo San Kumyo Kotai Shu Yakunan Kaihichi Egen Meshi Kon Moan Te Sokusho Akudo Sudaten Shumon Kosojo Mandoku Iyoro Jippo Ichigaten Shujuki Tenko Onhugen Ishu Kai Hodo Koseku Dokuho Jodai Shuchu Seppo Shishiku Kuyo Ithayabut Kusokushu Tokuhon Anesh Nyoman Tokui Sangayo Nobut Mugechi Kudatmi Husho Gangaku Eriki Toshi Sai Shoson Shiganya Koka Daisen no Kando Koku Shoten 도 진묘케 나만나부 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 간니의 시크도쿠 요도 세이 사이 논모나이 신 언조 나무미다 부츠 나무다 부츠 나무미다 부츠
Next, we'll have Gatha. We're going to sing the texture of life on page 157. If the Sangha will please rise.
Standing for the devotional reading, which I believe is the Four Noble Truths. And if you would read the Four Noble Truths along with me, either on the screen or on page 11 in our service book. Four Noble Truths. Dukkha, difficulty. Dissatisfaction comes from not living in accord with the truth of impermanence and interdependence. Samudaya, arising. The delusion of self-importance, expressed through greed and anger, is the cause of dukkha. Nirodha, cessation. The transformation of greed, anger, and delusion is the cure for dukkha. Marga, path. Shakyamuni Buddha taught the Eightfold Path as medicine for putting an end to dukkha. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Well, good morning. Thank you for joining us in cyberspace or in the Temple Hondo here. I, as always, must thank Alan Goto for our videoing the service and for the tech support needed to get that video to you. Also, Kathy Kumagai helps with the tech support and just played organ for us and will continue to play organ for the service. Of course, we must thank Dona Mitoma for chairing the service, and I want to thank Kyoko Gibbs for the especially nice job on the flowers today, and we want to thank Josh and Marvin for being here. Thank you. You're filling out the Sangha for us. Last week was Hanamatsuri, if memory serves, so my theme was the life and the teachings of the historical Buddha Shakyamuni. Being April 16th, I really can speak on any topic at all, and I will, if I may, look at one of the very old Buddhist teachings, the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths, in current literature, you will notice that they're referred to as the Four Truths of the Noble Ones, or the Four Truths that lead to nobility. You don't really remember that. Four Noble Truths is fine, but it's Sanskrit grammar, and it's meaningful that what is noble is the people who taught this and where you get. That's what's noble, not the teachings. They're good. Teachings are like rafts. They're to get us to that nobility, genuine nobility. The Buddha grew up in a very class-oriented society, and he sometimes subverted the language. He told us that nobility comes from being wise and compassionate. And he said explicitly, nobility does not depend upon what village you're from, what color your skin is, or who your parents were. He mentioned those three things: family, lineage, color of skin, and location. Those don't matter. Being kind and wise matter. That makes a noble person. So these are the four truths leading to nobility, or the four truths taught by the noble ones, and you can call them the Four Noble Truths. Just only a scholar will argue with you. I want to look back at the version in our service book. I know we just read that, but I want to read through it with you again, make a couple of reservations about the language. By and large, it's very good. The Four Noble Truths, reading from the OCBC service book, which we use here. Dukkha, difficulty. Difficulty is good. Suffering is the correct translation. Difficulty is just fine. It is not some special thing. It is suffering, being in difficulty. And dissatisfaction comes from not living in accord with the truth of impermanence and interdependence. That's correct. Dissatisfaction comes from not living in accord with the truths of impermanence and interdependence. This is true, but it's also because we don't remain mindful of karmic law, that as we reap, so shall we sow. It does not... It also depends upon reminding ourselves of the rejection of the soul theory. We are biological persons in a system, and we have a future, but we're not some separate soul thing. And also the commitment to kindness and compassion is very important to remain mindful of if we're not going to be dissatisfied. And we do want to remember that this self-centeredness is the constant concomitant of suffering. This is all, when we're in trouble, it's always involved with this self-centeredness. But the other causes of suffering are important to be mindful of, too. Factors like unfair distribution of wealth, demeaning working conditions, global warming, and the need to turn back this terrible environmental destruction we're facing. So these also are important to avoid suffering. But we talk about greed, anger, and foolishness because we can do something about those right now. And the second truth is that the second truth leading to nobility, as it's written in our service book, is that the delusion of self-importance expressed through greed and anger is the cause of dukkha. Again, that's very good. The delusion of self-importance expressed through greed and anger. That's exactly right. But it's also, besides greed and anger, there is foolishness, and there is, again, those objective causes like environmental degradation, skewed distribution of wealth, gender discrimination, and racial discrimination that are systemic. You can change how you feel. You're still in a system that holds people down. These are problems. We're not pretending they're not. But if we could do something about our prejudice and our forgetting about impermanence and interconnectedness and all this karmic law, we would reduce our suffering. The third truth of the Noble Ones, as we have it in our service books, is the transformation of greed, anger, and delusion is the cure for dukkha. Well, that's a little succinct, and again, I prefer suffering, or the term they use to translate dukkha, which is difficulties. It is a matter indeed of seeing the destructive effects of greed, anger, and delusion, and acting to change them, which leads to the fourth truth. Acting so as to leave behind our compulsive desiring, our hatred, and our stupidity, those factors that have been clouding our lives for so long now, for so long. The service book speaks of transforming our greed, anger, and delusion. This is what we must do, but transformation is a bit of a rhetorical term in this context. We must replace compulsive yearning, hatred, and stupidity. We must replace compulsive yearning with generosity. We must replace hatred with kindness and stupidity with clarity and wisdom. That replacing leads us into the fourth truth of the Noble Ones, which again is that, as the service book has it, Shakyamuni Buddha taught the Eightfold Path as medicine for putting an end to dukkha. Well, keep hold of that medicine analogy, and again, it's not just the Eightfold Path, any path that's wholesome. Any path that leads into the light, any path that leads into harshness, this is our path. Now, that's one version of the Four Noble Truths. I'm going to give you two more. I'm not going to talk as long as you might suspect, but I put on the table there if you want to take them as you leave. Xeroxes, I'm going to use them next week. They won't go to waste. I have a YBA event next week. But this is the Four Noble Truths for a 4-year-old. So what if you're trying to explain the Four Noble Truths to a 4-year-old? I got this off the internet. I have no idea who wrote it. The first one is, sometimes people feel sad. Well, isn't that the truth? You want to get right down to it? That's it. Sadness, dukkha, suffering, sadness. Sometimes people feel sad. Second truth, sometimes the thing that makes people sad is not getting something they want or getting something they don't want. Well, that's sure the truth of it. It's when you don't get what you want, can't hold on to what you need, and you get stuff you don't want. Yep, that's the cause, all right. Number 3, the third truth as expressed for 4-year-olds, there is a way not to be so sad about not getting what you want or getting something you don't want. And the fourth truth is, the way is to not think so much about what you want at all, but instead think about how you can be kind and helpful to your family, your teachers, your friends, other people, animals, bugs, and everything that lives. That's pretty good. As is often the case with extremely simple presentations of Buddhist ideas, this is pretty good. And I will come back to it at the end, but before I do that, I'm going to give you one more way of understanding the Four Noble Truths. It won't take as long as you think, but the medical analogy is very important, I think. The Four Noble Truths are analogous to a medical process where you have a diagnosis, a prognosis, a diagnosis, an etiology, a prognosis, and a treatment plan. That's how medicine goes, and that's how these 4 truths work. The first, the diagnosis, is there is a problem, there is suffering, and a lack of fulfillment, stultification. You know, there are kids living in the ghetto right now that could write like Beethoven and Shakespeare. And if you don't like the classics, there's a kid in South Central LA right now who would play guitar better than Jeff Beck if you'd give him an electric guitar. You know, and this true is sadness. That makes me sad. I know it's true, and it's sad. Again, the first truth is a diagnosis. There is sadness. There is a problem. Following a diagnosis, you need an etiology. What's the cause? Well, don't ignore those proximate causes, as I've been saying. Unfair distribution of wealth, demeaning working conditions, environmental degradation, excessive proliferation of weaponry throughout the world. Catastrophic weaponry and handguns, all of it. How much of it do we need? How many weapons are there per living person on this planet? Nobody knows. Probably about 5. Probably about 5 weapons for every human. It's crazy. We got to hit all this stuff, but looking at the constant concomitant, the subjective side of it, what we got to do is let go of that greed, the anger, and the foolishness. Don't be silly, and don't be hateful. You know, anger is the term moha, but the real problem is hatred, because things are irritable. We are irritable organisms. That's one of the things we do. We feel pleasure, we get bored, or we're irritated. That's about all we can do. You will get angry. You'll get angry, but you don't have to strike out mentally or physically against that which angers you, you know? Don't harm the other, even if they rise that anger. You can let go of that being hateful and wishing them harm. That can be let go of. That is the concomitant cause. That is the etiology. Whatever else is bearing upon our condition, our greed, our foolishness, and our hatred are making it worse for ourselves. The third cause, looking at the medical analogy, is the prognosis. And there's always a prognosis. But the prognosis here is always positive, because there are diseases that can be cured. I've told you many times about my friend. It's been 34 years now. He had almost death-dealing cancer. He's been completely cancer-free for 34 years in good health, goes jogging every morning. Many diseases can be cured, and we'll cure those we can. If you can't cure the illness, you can mitigate its effect. We were just talking about, I was talking with one of our friends about using salves and braces when you have a bad joint. Yeah, I mean, put that brace on your knee. It won't hurt as much when you walk up the steps. There are ways of mitigating the suffering, and we should approach those. And that is the prognosis. If you can't stop the suffering, you can mitigate it. If you can't actually turn the process around a little, you can do palliative care. Palliative care is always possible. Just reduce the suffering. You're not making the person able to walk. You're not healing them. You're not curing them. Just stop that suffering. You know, there's always something that can be done. We can always reduce the increase of the suffering. We can take action. That is always the prognosis. And the path, again, is any wholesome path. It's not just the Eightfold Path. Any wholesome path, any path that leads into the light and out of the dark. And so let me again look at the path as presented to 4-year-olds by some unknown person from the internet. As a 4-year-old might have the explanation of our path, the way is to not think so much about what you want at all, but instead think about how you can be kind and helpful to your family, to your teachers, your friends, other people, animals, bugs, and every living thing. This is good, and behind the simplicity of its expression lies a very deep truth. Bond with other people and remember your values. Bond with other people and other living things. Care about others. Help them when you can. This is the thrust of all the Buddhist teachings. This is the quintessence of the Dharma. This is the truth. Care about others. I will close the Dharma message portion of the service with Kansho and saying the Buddha's name. Please join me as you feel moved. We rely upon the source of limitless wisdom and endless life. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much.
Would the Sangha please rise for closing remarks? Always strive to improve your mind, improve your attitude. Rather than using your intelligence and the vast potential you have as a human being to create more problems for yourself and for the world, cultivate the good heart, bodhicitta, and cultivate wisdom. Train your mind to become less and less angry and more patient, less selfish and more loving, more compassionate and more concerned with the happiness of others. Without actively working to do this, however, your mind will remain just the same, or more likely become even worse, building up more anger, more pride, more desire, more dissatisfaction. This is how all violence happens. Wisdom simply means awareness of reality. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much. Please be seated. And again, I would like to thank Alan Goto, who is with us broadcasting our message to the world. Kathy Kumagai, who is our president of the temple, and also our
Not right now.
and our musical accompanist, Kathy Mikuni, who's our religious chair and helps organize us all. Sensei Reverend Gibbs for our Dharma message, and Kyoko Okuda Gibbs, who has just beautifully done the flowers, but also 10,000 other things around the temple in helping. Let's see. Oh, yesterday we saw a film at Janum, and it was called, let's see, what was it called? Before They Take Us Away. It's a film about, very much about my parents' experience during World War II. It's a film about those folks who lived on the West Coast who did not want to go to camp and instead went elsewhere. Very interesting and well done because it showed so many different points of view. Some people were it was very difficult for them. Other people felt it was a great relief. Some even wanted to go into camp after being out of camp because it was so hard trying to scrape together a living, and they were denied by the government. They said, no, you're out, you stay out. It's very puzzling in some ways. It's going to be, well, hopefully it's going to be broadcast on PBS, and evidently if you go to the PBS website and you Google this title, you might be able to see it. We're kind of going to be writing to SoCal PBS to ask them to broadcast it on Asian American Heritage Week, which I believe is next month. It's Before They Take Us Away is the title. It's very, very insightful. So thank you very much, and I can see that Marvin has something to say.
I'm Marvin Inoue, and I'm a volunteer down at Japanese, American Museum. And I was going to mention that movie, had my wife not mentioned it, but also there's a festival going on in Monterey Park called the Cherry Blossom Festival. As you know, Monterey Park had a terrible event take place on the Chinese New Year, and they are trying to heal from that. And the Cherry Blossom Festival has gone on for, I can't remember how many years, but it's gone on for a long time, and it's one way that the city of Monterey Park is trying to heal. So just today, it's a free event, and it's a lot of, different types of foods and vendors and stuff, and probably there will be some speakers down there. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And again, those of you that don't know about the EHO, there's a book that you can stamp for your relatives at Japanese American National Museum. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for watching or attending the service, and we hope to see you next week. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
If you haven't given incense yet, please feel free to come on up and do that, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.